One of the toughest parts of being human is dealing with other people being angry or disappointed in us. You might react by being angry back, people pleasing, or avoiding that person altogether. But no matter what you do, your brain likely keeps coming back to this person who's angry at you, and you end up feeling anxious, fearful, resentful, or drained. Why can't you just let it go? And what can you do to make it better? Well, today I'll teach you why you can't just let it go and the 4 things you can do to ease your anger and anxiety when someone is mad at you and find some internal peace. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. You know who I am, and I got such a good one for you today. One of my clients brought this up recently and was just talking about how it's so hard to think about anything else when someone is mad at you. And this person, for her, has really done her wrong, let me say. And yet she's still upset that they're mad at her. This was an old boyfriend. It's not someone she wants to get back together with. It is not someone that, anything like that. But she hates that he's mad at her. And I get it, right? Don't we all get it? Can't you feel it right now? It's so interesting what happens for us when someone is mad at us. And this has definitely come up with other clients, without a doubt. And you all have written to me about it. And thank you when you write to me. You know I love that. So let's talk about it. Let's get in there and discuss what you can do and why you're upset in the first place. Although I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the why. I think most of you know why. But I'll explain it. So when someone is upset with us, of course, it's hard not to get dragged into their emotions. You might get mad when your mom is mad at you. Maybe you feel depressed when your partner is unhappy with you. You feel like poop when your boss criticizes your work, right? That's pretty common. The problem is tying your happiness to whatever someone else is feeling, because different people can have different moods throughout the day. And so, they're happy and then you're happy, they're sad, then you're sad. You're like on this roller coaster of emotions if you allow their feelings, either positive or negative, to dictate how you feel. So, right, that's really at the bottom of it. Now, and again, so why? Why, Abby, why do I feel this way? Most people will tell you it's, natural to get upset when someone else is upset with you. But again, like, why is that? I mean, whether you think the other person is justified, if, their anger is justified or not, you still get upset. It doesn't seem right. It seems like it should only be one way or the other. When someone else is upset with us, it signals a part of our brain called our limbic system. And I've done a lot of work on this before. I've talked about this a lot before, and I'll link to that in the show notes, the past episodes I've done on this, on your lizard brain. But I will say this, that, this is really an ancient biological system. Everyone has your limbic system that looks for threats in the environment. It's to help keep us safe. The problem is that the limbic system can be a real drama queen or king, and it tells you that a hangnail is cancer, that a headache is a brain tumor. It over dramatizes the is that a word? Is that a word? Over dramatize? I think it is. It is now. Anything that, it makes it bigger. It makes it more dramatic when there's a negative thing going on, and it gets your brain circuitry wired into the famous, that you've heard of course, fight, flight, or freeze mode, or a fawning mode. I did an entire episode on fawning, which is basically people pleasing on crack. It's a trauma response or a dysfunction response. I'll link to that again in the show notes. Any of those modes, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you get stress-inducing hormones and neurotransmitters that start flooding your brain and body. That's the problem. This is an autonomic response. Now, And let me say really quickly for anyone new who's listening, anything, any research I quote, any past podcasts I want to point you to, or anything else, any resource, you can find all of it on the website where you find this particular episode. Or if you're watching on YouTube, hello, you get to see what I'm wearing. And if today I'm having a bad hair day, you get to see that. It'll all be linked below the video. Okay. So just so you know. So, and of course, like and subscribe if you're watching me anywhere. Give a like, give a subscribe, write a review for the podcast. Help me out. Comment in a loving way under a video. I love it all. So if you had a relatively healthy childhood, these kind of negative feelings will be really short-lived. And if you've done therapy or other helpful modalities, regular meditation, mindfulness, biofeedback, EMDR, there's a bunch of them. You'll find that you can really stop your system from getting so triggered, at least in a long-standing way. It doesn't, where everyone is always going to feel a little something when someone's angry at us or reacts to us in an angry way. Of course you are. That's okay. The problem is if you're, ruminating on it. The problem is if you can't get it out of your head. The problem is if, God forbid, you take some unhealthy action or, your head is consumed with this all the time. That's the problem. So I do want to say that. I just want to separate that out. Nothing you will do will make that completely disappear, but it won't stay as long. It doesn't get as negative. It doesn't stick in your brain the same way. And that's what's great. But if there was dysfunction, so that's a healthy, childhood, or again, you've done all the therapy or good therapy and you've really taken care of a lot of that. But for a lot of people listening right now, if there was dysfunction or trauma in your childhood of any kind, you'll likely get triggered when someone's mad at you in such a way that it feels impossible not to ruminate or overly focus on their anger with you, right? To think about it, think about it, and think about it. And a trigger is when some person, situation, or even it can be a smell, right? Drives an unconscious thought, feeling, or behavior. So in other words, you have some reaction that you don't feel you have control over, or you don't even realize you're having a reaction. So often the reaction doesn't match up or isn't, commensurate with whatever's going on. And I, again, did a whole episode on triggers and how to effectively deal with them, and I'll link to it. When you get triggered, what we call your autonomic or involuntary nervous system becomes dysregulated. And you either get into a state of hyperarousal, which is connected to the fight or flight response, or a state of hypoarousal, which is connected to the freeze response. There's, again, also something which I mentioned called the fawn or fold response, which is most often connected with hypoarousal. But in my own practice, I have to say I've seen it split. So I think some people react with hyperarousal and others with hypoarousal when they fawn. And what am I talking about? Again, I go deep on the trigger episode into all this. I also have an episode called How to Manage Your Emotions where I go deep into this. But in hyperarousal, you feel kind of that hypervigilant state, agitated, anxious, panicked. It's hard to relax. Sometimes there's emotional flooding, which is where, you're crying or you're angry or you're lashing out or something. There's sleeplessness. That's in that hyperarousal state where we see fight or flight. In hypoarousal, you'll often experience symptoms like depression or brain fog, lethargy, disconnection, dissociation, hopelessness, sometimes being really passive or overly compliant. And I will say this, I would like you to go back and listen to the trigger episode because it's very important that you identify what normally happens to you when you're triggered. Because the tools to use when you're in a hyperarousal state are different often than what you'd use in a hypoarousal state. And again, I go into all the tools and what to do for each one in that other episode. So I'd really like you to go back and listen. And I need to give a little shout out, my latest book, Boundaries Made Easy, Your Roadmap to Connection, Ease, and Joy, which is doing very well. Thank you. Also on audiobook and all that. I just want to say I go deep into it here too, because so much of this I'll actually be using an example, I think, about boundaries and people getting angry. Usually they get angry when we draw boundaries. I talk about all this in there to such a degree and have lots of things you can do to, lots of action tools. And my Boundaries Made Easy workbook is with the editor as we speak. So that should be out hopefully, probably not by the time you're listening to this, but I'm hoping by October 1st. That's our goal, October 1st, 2024. So be on the lookout. We will try to get that out to you as soon as possible. So what are the 4 things you can do to feel better? Let's get to it. Let's do this thing, Abby. How you doing right now, by the way? You listening? You feeling yourself? Are you on edge, or do you have a pen and paper out? So option 1 is to acknowledge how they feel. So let me talk about this. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. What do I always say? Do you want to be correct or effective? If someone is upset with you, start the conversation by acknowledging how your words or actions might have impacted the other person. Do not, I repeat, do not say anything about your intentions. Your intentions don't matter. I say with love. I say, I love you, but I give you the real thing. They're not going to move the conversation forward. You hate it when someone hurts your feelings and then they say, oh, well, I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant. You're overreacting or whatever. It doesn't matter what they intended. So guess what? It's the same when you do it to other people. Don't do that. And let me also be clear that acknowledging how the other person feels is not agreeing that they should feel that way. It's not apologizing. Do not apologize. This is not what you're doing. Unless you really did something bad and mean or horrible, and that's the reason, then you should give a full apology, which would start with this anyway, with acknowledgement. It's not saying you were wrong. It's not agreeing that you made them feel that way. Okay? It's none of that. So, I'm going to give you that example I talked about before that happened really recently. This is a different client than the one I mentioned in the beginning, but I have a client, we're going to call her Rashida. Okay? And Rashida was about 8 months postpartum, but hadn't really lost any of the weight she'd gained during her pregnancy. I was like this too, man. I had a really hard time taking off pregnancy weight. I'm not going to lie. So I feel like I'm still taking it off. Anyway, but she was just struggling. She really was. Her mother kept commenting on her weight and being very critical. So every time they spoke or saw one another, and they used to, she was seeing her mother quite a bit, would come over and see the baby. Sometimes she watched the baby for her. So Rashida, she and I worked together very closely around this, and she ended up speaking to her mother, and she drew a real boundary. Remember, a boundary has to have a response or a teeth, something you'll do if the person doesn't do what you're asking. Okay, so I want to be clear about that. A boundary is not just saying to someone, I don't like how you're talking to me. That's not a boundary. If you want to learn more about boundaries, go read the book or listen to one of my multiple podcasts about it, podcast episodes about it. So she drew a boundary and told her mother, and she did such a good job in the most loving and thoughtful way possible. Mom, I love you. When you keep bringing up my weight, I end up feeling really bad about myself, and I get angry at you, which I don't want because I want to feel close to you. I love you. I need you to stop mentioning anything to do with my weight. If you keep doing it, I'm going to start leaving those conversations immediately. I'm not going to stay and listen. And her mother was furious, so angry at her for this boundary, right? Of course, the mother was saying, I'm only trying to help. It's because I care, all that crap that you hear, right? There it is with the intention again. I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, bullshit. So she really got, I would say, enraged when Rashida actually followed through. Because one day she left her mom's house when she brought up her weight. Rashida was over with the baby. her mom brought up her weight again, and Rashida got the baby and again did it really well, very lovingly, like, Mom, I told you not to do that. I'm going to leave. We're going to try again another day. I love you, but I'm really, it's not okay. And just left. And that was it. Didn't get an argument with her about her, whatever. But she had never stood up to her mother before and was having a really difficult time standing her ground. And so she and I were working hard in therapy, man. We were working hard. But, and what we really worked on was her trying, she kept trying, she wanted a relationship with her mother. She just couldn't have it this way. So she kept trying to re-engage her mother. But, and I'll tell you, it took a few tries, but it worked. Because of course her mother wants a relationship with her. And Rashida started every conversation acknowledging, I know my drawing a boundary around how you speak to me is very difficult for you. See what it is? She's acknowledging that this is difficult for her mom. She was acknowledging it. And she did this in a multitude of ways. Like, it wasn't just this sentence I'm giving, because she kept trying to re-engage her. I know you love me and you're just trying, and you think you're helping me. You want to talk about my weight to help me, which I don't even think was true. I think her mother was embarrassed by the weight, and her mother had her own food issues, shall we say. So this was like horrifying to her mother, and her mother was a control freak. So for all those reasons, was having a hard time. But she said, I know you're having a hard time with, me drawing a boundary around how you speak to me. And I know it's really difficult for you. I can only remind you that I love you and I want to feel close to you. And when you comment on my weight, I feel the opposite. I'm angry at you and I don't want to spend any time with you. So she did this, and her mother would react very angrily over and over, and you're being this, and you're too sensitive, and that's just how I am. You're asking me to change, all this stuff. But Rashida just kept to it. She just was very clear. And again, she said it a number of different ways, in a number of different occasions, while always drawing her boundary and leaving, when her mother did it. And you know what? Her mother, it took, I don't even know how long it took. Maybe it was a couple months overall. But it stopped. Her mother stopped commenting on her weight. Kind of amazing. And she said, and Rashida was telling me, like, I feel closer to my mom. It's so nice. I feel seen. I feel heard. I want to spend time with her. Like, I think my mom is at least unconsciously getting how much closer we are and how much better we feel together when she's not doing that. So she felt, my client felt like her mom was actually being less judgmental and critical in other ways too. So who knows? But anyway, so here's the deal. You got to remember, you're not trying to get the other person to agree with you when you acknowledge their feelings. You are trying to create understanding. That is all you're trying to do. And that's what happened, right? I don't think Rashida's mom would ever agree that she shouldn't talk about her weight, or that it wasn't helpful or something. But there was clearly some understanding. And that's what happened. So, and let me say this, even though you acknowledge in this healthy way, right? You do this, you acknowledge, and you do all the things Abby's telling you to do. They still might remain mad at you, which kind of, again, is what happened with Rashida for a while. In my experience, what changes is that you feel better because you're being open, transparent, courageous, honest, and this makes you feel better about yourself. And allows you to truly see that this is about the other person, not you. And that, in turn, helps you not be so engaged with their anger at you. It allows you to let it go. It allows you to move on. I really want, anything you hear that I say and you're like, I can't do that. That doesn't work. I've already tried it. I would really offer to you that you probably haven't tried it exactly the way I'm saying it. And I would try it. You got nothing to lose. Right? Try it the new way. Try it the way I'm saying. And really notice if you're paying attention to the details I have. So again, you might have told your mother before, don't talk about my weight, it makes me mad, or I'm going to leave, but then you never left. Or whatever. You have to really do the whole thing. You can't do a piece of it and say it doesn't work. It's like getting a recipe for a cake and putting half the ingredients in and then saying this tastes like crap. Well, yeah, you didn't do it the way it was laid out. Or you're taking half the antibiotics and maybe you feel better for a moment, but then you get sicker. You got to follow through with the whole course. Okay. So I do want to say that. All right. Option number 2 is to do nothing. In some cases, I would advise doing nothing when it comes to the other person. Don't approach them or try to make things better, and instead focus on yourself and dealing with your triggered response through mindfulness in that moment that you're having it. When your brain goes to the issue, gently and non-judgmentally, bring it back to the present where all is well, where nothing is so scary. This client who I mentioned, who is the one who inspired the podcast, who I mentioned in the very beginning, this ex, I don't want her to talk to him. She doesn't need to engage with him. She doesn't need to, but she's afraid, that he's going to make things worse. She's in a relatively small town. He's going to talk about her, whatever. There's other things at play that she's worried about. And that, gets you to start maybe people pleasing or reacting out of a trauma response or something else that's going to be bad in the long run. She's doing a great job, by the way, because I have amazing clients with this. But in that case, right, don't talk to him. Work on your triggers. So if you have not downloaded my free mindfulness starter kit yet, I do not know what you are waiting for. There's nothing weird. I'm not going to try to sell you something at the end. I don't do anything sleazy ever. I'm always very transparent with what I'm doing and what's going on here. I know that's hard to believe in a world today, but I am. I always let you know when you download anything from me, free or otherwise, you will be put on my weekly love letter list. This is not a list I sell to or try to get you to do something. This is where I just send you a weekly letter of inspiration and hope and try to get you thinking differently about things, completely free. So I've been doing it for years. And you can just unsubscribe if you don't like it. It's that easy. But I put you on the list because I'm being a bossy Jewish mother and I want you to have more help. Because you might be like, well, why can't I opt into the list, Abby? Because a lot of times you don't opt into what's good for you. And I'm controlling and crazy. I'm your bossy Jewish mother. And I'm telling you, people love that damn letter. If you would try it, if you like the podcast at all, you'll love the love letter. I don't know how else to say it to you. But when I used to have it where you had to sign up, I think people are just so naturally suspicious. They had a hard time, or I don't know why. But what I know is that you guys open that letter because I can see. Not you individually. There's thousands and thousands of people on there. I just can see overall what we call it is an open rate. We call it an open rate. And I can tell that almost 3/4 of you open that email. That's a lot. That's like crazy. So it's because it has a lot of value. So do it. And if you don't want to download anything and want to be on the love letter list, just go to my website. There's a little tab up top that says love letter. You put in your email and you will start. I just took a month off from the love letter. By the time you're listening to this, the love letter's back. So I take off a few weeks every year. But other than that, it comes out every week. And I think it'll help. Okay, enough of that soapbox. There you go. Option 3, we're almost there. You got to work on detachment. You have to work on your detachment. I've talked a lot about the importance of loving detachment in great detail before. And again, I will link to that older episode of the podcast where I think it's called the 3 steps to loving detachment. I think everyone should listen to that, whether you feel like you're codependent or a people pleaser or not. I think the whole world should listen to that. But I wanted to say a word here about just non-attachment and, detachment or non-attachment, which is, it's a basic tenet of the Buddhist philosophy, okay? And non-attachment is the idea that we should let go of our attachment to things, which include not just material possessions, but, our thoughts, our emotions, and relationships, okay? And of course, material possessions too, right? So you give up attachment to those things. Non-attachment doesn't mean you should avoid, buying a great pair of shoes, thank God, because, we all know I would not avoid that, or that you shouldn't get into a relationship, but instead it speaks to not becoming attached to them in a way that would cause you suffering, because they will inevitably change or disappear, right? So if I bought a pair of shoes and I was so attached to them and loved them and then they got stolen and I could never replace them, that should not make me depressed and anxious or upset or rageful or anything, right? That attachment to them is what does that. So yeah, I might be sad for a moment, like, oh, I love my shoes, but then move on. Like, wow, I had a lot of good years with those shoes. I felt really good wearing them. Wow, not, now I have room in my closet for a different pair of shoes that will bring me even more joy possibly. But in this moment, I'm totally fine because the shoes do not equal my happiness. And so that's the kind of idea. Or that, if your partner is in a bad mood, you're not attached. Or if your partner says they don't want to get married, you're not attached to an outcome because relationships change. I have a lot of people who say to me, well, I just want to get back to how we were before, in a relationship. I want us to go back. You can't go back. There is no back. I don't know where you're getting that from. There's no back. Okay. That's the past. You can't, I'd like to go back to how my boobs looked when I was 23. Yeah, I'd really like that. Okay. So, and I'm not going to get surgery. Therefore, no, I can't. And even if I did, they're not going to look like they did then. It's just, you got it. Our bodies change. Everything changes. I think that's why there's so much plastic surgery these days. And that's fine if you do that, by the way. God bless you. Have at it. But there's so much of that because we are so attached to our previous selves. And I need you to be attached to your current, or not attached to your current self. You're currently okay. Everything is okay. It is hard, I'll tell you, it's hard to get older. I'm not going into that good night very gracefully. I'm not going to lie. I color my hair and, I get my nails done. I do stuff. I'm ready to get a little Botox. We'll talk about that later. If you're watching on YouTube, you're like, yeah, I see all your wrinkles. Maybe it's time. But all I'm saying is don't get attached, right? So generally you practice non-attachment through mindfulness practices with material possessions, you would let go of belief that they bring you happiness. And instead you'd focus on appreciation for peace in the present moment, right? You not focus on those, you focus on the present moment and the peace you feel. In relationships, you'd recognize that all relationships are impermanent and you would allow them to grow, to change and evolve naturally without becoming too fixed to a particular outcome. And yes, that means letting go of control. And yes, that sucks. And that is my hardest thing in the whole wide world because I'm a control freak, as I just said, a control enthusiast, as Gary calls me. Both my kids during the break I just took off have left for universities. And I'm an empty nester. And, it's very easy to become very fixed. Like, oh, I don't want the kids to go and I want them close. And I might have tried to convince, my daughter to go to a school closer by or whatever. But that's not, she fell in love with a school in Colorado. It's a few hour plane ride away. It's a time zone, she's an hour ahead of me now. It's farther. Max is a couple hour drive away. It's hard. My little babies are out and God, don't get me started. I'll start crying in the middle here, but you pick it up when I'm laying down. Things change. They're supposed to. That's how it comes. So if I was, yes, I'm sad that my kids are gone, and I definitely am I went through a little grief period there. I'm probably still going through it a little bit. And I feel happy in my life still. I am able to focus on other things. I'm able to I'm very excited to do the podcast today, to record it for you. There's a lot of joy in my life. It's not fixed on my children being right next to me. There's tons of joy. And I'm actually really proud that they're hopefully going to stay launched. I know these days you can't tell, but getting out of the house. So you got to let it go of some control and this fixation on things staying the same. So, and with your emotions and your thoughts, you learn to observe your thoughts from a third party perspective. It's what we call metacognition. So without being attached to a thought or feeling or believing it defines you, that's really the goal. I think the example you'll hear a lot and a great thing you can do to be non-attached to your feelings is saying something like, I'm noticing that I'm having a feeling of anxiety instead of saying I'm anxious. We say I'm anxious and we're like, I'm a person and anxiety lives within me and I am, this thing. I am tall, I am short, right? These are like facts. So it gets kind of weird. But if you say, oh, I'm noticing this feeling I'm having of it. Oh, wow, anxiety. You can see it as almost, we talk about like a cloud passing in front of your vision. that is outside of you. You're seeing it from, again, that fly on the wall perspective. We call this self-distancing. We call this a lot of things. Very, very important when you're trying to not, yeah, I'm noticing my mom is angry. I'm noticing that my boss is upset with me. Wow, I'm feeling anxious that my boss is upset with me. Okay. But right now I have a job, all is well. Do you know what I mean? I'm okay. And so when you practice non-attachment over time, you find that you'll cultivate really this sense of inner peace, of contentment, because your thoughts and feelings aren't attached to anything external. Internal peace and joy and freedom from suffering are the ultimate benefits of practicing non-attachment. I'm not trying to tell you all to become Buddhist, like it's fine. I'm a Jubu, but it's fine. You don't, you do it through mindfulness. It's all very psychology based and all that these days. So I'm not trying to push philosophy on you. Although I guess I am in a way, but you know what I mean, not Buddhism. I am trying to just say that this is one of the ways, that I learned this tenet. Okay. So, and again, in relationships, we speak about loving detachment so that you remember that empathy, compassion, and kindness are part of detaching from the feelings of others, so that you're not detaching with anger or disgust or annoyance or any of that, or with a wall, right? What I always say, boundaries are meant to keep people in, walls are meant to keep people out. Boundaries are love. They're from compassion, kindness, love. Okay. So when my client Rashida was drawing a boundary with her mom, it's because she wanted to have a relationship with her mom. She was trying to figure out how to not be angry and resentful at her mother all the time and to want to spend time with her. She also, when she and I talked, I said, she's been commenting on your weight since you can remember. My client remembers being put on, being told like there was calorie restriction, there was, good foods and bad foods. Like those are her earliest memories because of her mom's kind of eating disorder, what I would call, or disordered eating, if you want to say it that way, what I would call disordered eating. So her mom was so rigid with food and all that. Of course, my client was too. And that's why all the stuff around the pregnancy and the gaining weight and whatever was a big deal. All right. Option 4 is something I've never talked about on the podcast before. How do you like that? I should have said that at the beginning as your little cliffhanger. So option 4 is the me, them, we lens. Okay. And I learned about the me, them, we lens many years ago it was a Buddhist teacher. So I'm sorry, I'm talking about Buddhism a lot today. I guess maybe that's the answer to dealing with people not being mad at you, but the tenets are, the thoughts of it are. And this is not like some Buddhist principle somewhere. You might be a Buddhist for years and say, I never heard that. So I'm just saying, I just happened to learn it from a teacher I had. And it goes like this. So in general, we see the world through, and this is very much supported by psychology, we see the world through a me lens. When things happen, we think about how we feel, how am I affected? I have my own story. I tell myself from my point of view, and I'm the center of this story, right? But of course, that I lens isn't objective. It's extremely biased, and it's filled with my own faulty beliefs and ideas about the world, right? You think something's true or a fact, it doesn't mean it is. When people say things to us that we don't like, we react. We believe they're being mean, critical, judgmental. And because you feel the way you think, you then feel angry, hurt, resentful, depressed, any of those wonderful feelings. We get the idea that it's someone else's fault that we're feeling a certain way. And I was here in my whole childhood that, I was driving my mother crazy, right? So you might, my mom, or you might be saying now, my mom drives me crazy, or my sister makes me so angry, right? We say those things as if someone else's fault that we're feeling a certain way. And so that's the me lens. But then we can come from a them lens, right? Where we try to think from the other person's point of view. So we attempt to have empathy, right? We might say to I used to say with my wonderful narcissistic mother, she was raised with a lot of trauma. There was incest, sexual abuse, all kinds of crap. She was raised with a lot of trauma, and she's doing the best with the tools or the resources she has. You might say, my sister just went through a divorce, and I know she's scared, and she's taking out her fear on me, right? And a great way, by the way, to get from that me lens to a they lens is to say, the story I'm telling myself about the situation is, I use that with my clients quite a bit. So when you're having a hard time with how someone is reacting to you or talking to you, or just how they're speaking to you, you can, again, that's that metacognition, that third person view where you step back and say, okay, the story I'm telling myself about this is, or about this person or this situation is, it's a story you are telling yourself. It helps you disconnect. So that's a great way. And it's really helpful and kind to think in this way. And you could stop there. That's great. But with, the empathy, and they're doing the best with the tools they have or whatever, the them lens. Okay. But in my experience, that's not always enough. When you're seeing through a them lens, again, it just might not be enough to have you caring less about the fact that they're mad at you, right? It might allow you to let go and move forward, and it might not. Okay. So if that's not enough to get you out of, if you're still obsessing about that someone, that someone is mad at you, because that's what happens sometimes. You can go, all right, they're doing the best with the tool they have, but I'm still, it's still making me crazy that they're acting that way. That's not enough. Okay. You haven't gotten there. So a we lens is the way. And a we lens, and not we, W-E-E, like tiny. It's a wee little lens. For my folks listening in Ireland, Scotland, and other places where you say we, I don't know, is that a British thing? It's not an American thing. Not very often. The only people I've heard say that are from that part of the world. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, so a we, just W-E lens, takes all this one step further. So you'd still go through the they lens, but then you'd bring it back to we. So you might say or think, what did I just say? Yes, my sister just went through a divorce, and I know she's scared and she's taking out her fear on me. Okay. But then you would say, but it's not okay. It's not good for her to be so full of fear and reacting from that place all the time. And it doesn't feel good to me because I don't want to be around her. I don't want to support her. I feel, antagonistic with her. I'm going to let her know I'm having a hard time with how she's acting, and tell her that I'd like us to work on finding a healthier, more connected way to communicate or share our feelings moving forward. It's something like that. I might have butchered that a little, but do you see where I'm going here? So I have a they, but I'm adding so that I can get my needs met too. The we lens moves you and the other person into being a team who collaborate and look to get everyone's needs met, not just this sort of understanding of what they're going through. And when we do that, we can deal better with someone being not just mad at us, but often we can resolve them being mad at us. That's that. But it, again, even if it quite doesn't, it helps us know we did all the things. And that really, my wonderful, beautiful person, my friend, is what it's all about. You need to know that you did it all so you can move forward. I have a client who is about to go through a divorce. And when he came to me, he didn't want to get divorced. He said, I really don't want to get divorced. I need to try to, I want to stay with this person somehow if I can do it. And he had known some other people I worked with that had sort of a miraculous kind of shift. And we did a lot of work together, and he did so much good work. Such a courageous, open soul. And the two of them went away together and did like a more intensive program and different kind of therapy. They tried different things and got to a point where nothing was doing it and really needed to separate. But the peace he has, knowing that, he'll be able to look his sons in the eyes later and say, I did everything I could. The peace he has with himself of really feeling like he went the distance and didn't take this lightly and really put his whole heart into something to try to shift it. This is huge. And I can't tell you how many clients I have that it's about doing it for yourself. It's not, oh, again, don't be attached to the outcome. All this stuff isn't about the other person not being mad at you. None of it that I just said is about, some of it could lead you there, but that's not the goal. The goal is for you to feel better. The goal is for you not to attach yourself to their anger and ruminate on it and get and be in suffering. So that's the goal. Not if your goal is for them not to be mad, then you're in trouble because you can't control other people. And the more you try, the worse it's going to get. So let that go. Let that part go. That's the non-attachment part. And instead work on you feeling at peace, you knowing you're walking out of the room, not having lost your mind or you're, gone off on them or cried uncontrollably or whatever, that you have kept your side of the street very clean. It will absolutely, positively change how you stay in this relationship or don't. And that's what it's all about. Your peace is why I'm here. Your peace is why you're listening. That is the only thing you and I have any control over. That's it. I'm sorry. I know. I want to control everyone. I'm trying to control you right now by telling you this. So you can be sneaky and have your own podcast and try it that way and reach millions of people that way. You can do it if you want. I highly recommend it. But I'm just saying, right, if I was only attached to that, I'd be in big trouble. But really what I get attached to is the fact that you're maybe listening right now to the very end, that you want it all, that you want to change, and that I think you understand what I'm talking about, that you get, even when you can't do it right away, that you get that this is the way to get there, that your peace is so important. And your peace does not have to be at the expense of anyone else or anything like that. When we're in true peace, true relaxation, true ease, we're in joy, we're in satisfaction, we're in contentment. And when we're in that place, other people might be upset, they might not, they might like it, they might not, it doesn't matter. But it's about us. I know. It feels so selfish in a way, but it's a healthy selfishness, which I've talked about quite a bit on the podcast and have an episode on. Healthy selfishness is absolutely, from the research, a place you want to be. Well, that is it, my love. Thank you if you stayed with me this long, right to the end. I just appreciate you so much. If no one's told you this week, I love you. You are eminently lovable. You are worthy of love. And there is great love here for you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you real soon.